talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the far.
Okay, so Caitlin Clark's season is officially over, and honestly, the WNBA has nobody but themselves to blame. Think about it. She had a quad strain in May, then groin pains hit in June and July. By August, a bone bruise. It's like her body just fell apart piece by piece. For the league, losing Clark isn't just a minor issue. It feels like the whole thing is crumbling because of bad officiating, poor management, and how much physical abuse their best player had to take.
Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the play.
Fans are absolutely furious, right? They're talking boycotts, demanding refunds, and they want answers. But the league, pretty much silent so far. I mean, how did women's basketball's reputation just tank after only 13 games? And what has Commissioner Kathy Engelbert even said? A lot of people feel like it's not nearly enough. Think about how many times refs just stared blankly when Clark got knocked off balance, shoved into a screen, or had her jersey grabbed, acting like nothing happened. That obvious inaction is what's really driving fans crazy.
It all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what.
Anyone who was there, watching live, saw it happen again and again. Possession after possession. Before the ball even reached her hands, Clark was getting double-teamed, pushed into help defense, or just getting absolutely blasted off screens. The officials had so many chances to step in, but they just decided to swallow their whistles instead. Pretty soon, these weren't just single incidents anymore. It was happening so often that even major papers like the Washington Post were writing about it.
WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen.
And here's the thing. It wasn't just one rogue team being overly aggressive. This wasn't some isolated issue. It felt like the entire league was just letting the player who had immediately become the face of the sport be exploited. That's the real problem, isn't it? Caitlin Clark was driving half of the WNBA's television surge. She was her team's biggest star, the league's top attraction, and she got zero protection out there.
This year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
Just think about that for a second. This one athlete, Caitlin Clark, should have been treated like the massive investment she clearly was, from Dallas to Vegas, New York to Chicago. But instead, even as TV networks were writing record-breaking broadcasting checks, officials just refused to give her the most basic calls that other stars in any league automatically get. What fans saw was constant physical contact, bodies banging into her off-ball, repeated hand-checking that completely shut her down, stuff that would have been a foul for literally any other player on the court.
Cover the NBA. These people that play in the NBA. These people that cover the NBA. There, I said these people, all of you. Black, white, green, purple. Why don't you understand a very simple thing? Her game is dynamic. Like Diana Taurasi was like a jackass to Caitlin Clark. Why? Her game is what people are drawn to. And then you go to the personality. Her game is different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say?
Listen, this wasn't just annoying to watch. It was straight up risky. Those frequent cheap shots don't just leave a player sore after a game. They build up, strained muscles get ground down until they finally break. So Clark's groin burning in June or her quad locking up in May, those weren't random at all. Those are classic outcomes from unprotected landings, difficult pivots forced by no space, and just constant hits. These are the exact stressors that cause chronic injuries, the kind that need a ton of rest to heal fully. But she kept playing through all of it. The alternative was empty arenas with fans who had already bought tickets to see her, not because she was truly ready. That's why you hear the word hypocrisy thrown around so much.
It's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, you know, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever and
The WNBA was constantly talking up record-breaking ticket sales, soaring retail numbers, and all these new endorsement deals, right? Every single one directly tied to Caitlin Clark's name, but then, when it came to the most basic job, protecting the player who was literally causing all that growth, they acted like she was just another rookie. And here's the thing, she absolutely was not just another rookie.
A two-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery.
So letting her get beaten up night after night didn't just mess with individual games, it totally put the stability of the entire season at risk. Here's the big question then, right? What happens when your golden goose suddenly stops playing? If the league isn't calling fouls, what happens when your best player ends up limping instead of running? Well, now we know.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioners Cup.
The officials' carelessness did more than just affect a single box score. It pretty much set the stage, preparing everyone for Clark's eventual collapse at the end of the season. And get this, the consequences weren't just limited to the court either. It spread out like a wildfire.
This is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot.
So, was Clark's sophomore campaign just destined to fail from the very beginning? Looking back, it sure feels that way. She actually reported quad stiffness during training camp back in May. Now, most athletes would pull back then to avoid more damage. But instead, she became the absolute focal point for every single event, public appearance, and advertising campaign. Less than 2 months later, that quad injury just worsened and turned into a serious groin problem. By July, her entire right side was completely torn, and then we got the announcement nobody wanted to hear. Clark's season was finished.
Here ahead, Kathy Engelbert and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Kathy, resign.
What's crazy is that she never even had a chance to fight back, really. It wasn't one unlucky turn of events. It was a whole series of careless choices. And the most frustrating part? She never truly had a period where she was completely healthy. She was listed as day-to-day at least 3 different times, and each time they added that reassuring term, precautionary. But here's the thing about the WNBA. Taking precautions seems to mean slapping a bandage on it, getting some quick care, and then getting back on the court by the weekend. Watching Clark play at half speed, just slogging through the minutes, was like seeing someone try to sprint on one leg while being told they were totally fine.
Players and coaches of the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved, because clearly there seems to be problems or a disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
At that point, it's just impossible to overlook the poor management, right? Any sports fan knows that if you don't let injuries heal, they're just going to get worse. But they put her through intense defensive work, back-to-back games, and fast cross-country travel. That didn't just create a chance for setbacks, it practically guaranteed them. The coaches could see it too. Her body language screamed anguish. Her drives weren't as strong, and her first step had definitely slowed down. Even with all the pressure to play, the medical staff's job was to step in and protect her. They didn't. They totally let her down.
Fan of sports for 60 years now. I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting the best product out on the court, and our officiating then follows that.
Look, fans were hyped to see her on the court. Stadiums were advertising road games completely centered around her, and tickets were flying off the shelves. But the truth is, she was far from prepared. It just feels like money was put way ahead of her. Long-term health, bridging this huge gap between all the public optimism and the private reality. It's tough to see it any other way. She had to fill seats because of the hype, and the league needed her to boost TV ratings. Even with all the warning signals glowing bright red, nobody, and I mean nobody, hit the brakes. So, Clark didn't just survive one freak accident. Instead, a season-long spiral of poor decisions caused her to completely fall apart over just 30. And on top of that, fans finally got proof that something was really wrong when Commissioner Engelbert officially addressed Clark's season-ending injury.
Against Breanna Stewart, she goes to the line 14 times. Asia Wilson goes to the line 13 times. And Aaliyah Boston can't play 20 minutes in a game without being on the bench in foul trouble. That's another problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, this year, it's not just Caitlin Clark. If you wear that Indiana Fever jersey, consider it done. The refs are not going to be fair, and they are going to cheat and do whatever it takes to do what the higher ups say.
What did they get? A really well-crafted PR statement, some sanitized optimism, and a vague reference to progress. This was instead of a commissioner actually dealing with the gravity of what's probably the league's worst health crisis in years. And here's the kicker, there was absolutely no mention of officiating errors, or any accountability for not protecting their player. That was the real sting for everyone. Clark went from bringing in record-breaking ratings to spending months on the sidelines.